Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and compassionate degrowth as a possible solution. I say possible by a very small percentage, but maybe. However, we are facing big challenges, to say the least. So I just did a interview with Head in the Box. If y'all didn't catch that, you can probably go over there and find it. I'm sure it's uploaded possibly by now. I just wanted to quickly do a quick video tonight, mainly to read this really funny article from the New Yorker. Was the main inspiration for tonight's broadcast. Polar vortex causes hundreds of injuries as people making snide remarks about climate change are punched in the face. This is by Andy Borowitz. And this is actually old. This is January 6th, 2014. So five years old. Polar vortex has been hanging around for a couple of years, hasn't it? Minneapolis, the so-called polar vortex caused hundreds of injuries across the Midwest today as people who said so much for global warming and similar comments were punched in the face. Authorities in several states said residents who made ignorant comments, erroneously citing the brutally cold temperatures as proof that climate change did not exist, were reporting a sharp increase in injuries to the face and head regions. In an emergency room in St. Paul, Harland Dorenson, 41, was waiting to be treated for bruising to the facial area after he made a crack about how the below freezing temperatures meant that climate change activists were full of shit. I just finished saying it, and boom, out of nowhere, someone punched me in the face, he said. This polar vortex is really dangerous. The meteorology professor Davis Logston of the University of Minnesota issued a safety warning to residents of the states hammered by the historic low temperatures. If you are living within the range of the polar vortex and you have something idiotic to say about climate change, do not leave your house. I found that to be really, really good. So here's an article from January 26, 2019, and the headline sounds really, really uplifting, very hopeful, until you start reading the article. Germany to close all 84 of its coal-fired power plants will rely primarily on renewable energy. This is from the Los Angeles Times. Germany, one of the world's biggest consumers of coal, will shut down all 84 of its coal-fired power plants over the next 19 years to meet its international commitments in the fight against climate change, a government commission said Saturday. So 19 years later, if we have 12 years to fight climate change, or 12 years until we're done for, oops, we missed it based on this timeline. The announcement marked a significant shift for Europe's largest country, a nation that had long been a leader in cutting CO2 emissions before turning into a laggard in recent years and badly missing its reduction targets. Coal plants account for 40% of Germany's electricity, itself a reduction from recent years when coal dominated power production. This is an historic accomplishment, said Ronald Pofalla, chairman of the 28-member government commission, at a news conference in Berlin following a marathon 21-hour negotiating session that concluded at 6 a.m. Saturday. Excuse me. The breakthrough ended 7 months of wrangling. We got to wrangle this problem here. It was anything but a sure thing, but we did it, Pofalla said. There won't be any more coal burning plants in Germany by 2038. Well, it's good, you know. Every large accomplishment starts with a small step. So Who knows? The plan includes some $45 billion in spending to mitigate the pain in coal regions. The government's recommendations are expected to be adopted by Chancellor Angela Merkel's government. She's still there. It's a big moment for climate policy in Germany that could make the country a leader once again in fighting climate change, said Claudia Kempfert, professor of energy economics at the DIW Berlin, the German Institute for Economic Research. It's also an important signal for the world that Germany is against getting serious about climate change. A very big industrial nation that depends so much on coal is switching it off. Well, that's great. Even if it's symbolic, even if it's, not fast enough, it's something. It's in the right direction, at least, at the very least, at the bare minimum. The decision to quit coal follows an earlier bold energy policy by the German government, which decided to shut down all of its nuclear power plants by 2022. Now, there is something special. That's something to talk about. In the wake of Japan's Fukushima disaster in 2011, shut down all of its nuclear power plants by 2022. That's 3 years from now. Now, that is an accomplishment. If they could only shut down all the coal-fired power plants by 2022, then we'd be talking about something to cheer about. At the time, that was harshly criticized as reckless by business leaders. Of course it was. Who worried that it would raise electricity prices and make their industries less competitive against foreign rivals? They also pointed out the futility of the move because no other major industrial country followed Germany's nuclear exit. Bravo, Germany. 12 of the country's 19 nuclear plants have been shuttered so far. That's excellent. That's really commendable. The plan to eliminate coal-burning plants as well as nuclear means that Germany will be counting on renewable energy to provide 65% to 80% of the country's power by 2040. Last year, renewables overtook coal as a leading source and now account for 41% of the country's electricity. It's a small country, remember, but they also are in the northern climes. German CO2 emissions fell appreciably in the early 1990s, largely because of the implosion of the communist East Germany, its heavily polluting industry. So there you go. The best way to get emissions to fall is to collapse industry. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. Still, the country continued to rely on coal-fired plants for a significant share of its electricity. Powerful utilities and labor unions helped keep coal-burning plants operating, and previous governments even planned to expand the number of coal plants to compensate for the pending withdrawal from nuclear power. There are still about 20,000 jobs directly dependent on the coal industry and 40,000 indirectly tied to it. Cheap and abundant, coal is the world's leading source of energy to produce electricity and will remain so despite Germany's exit. Wah, wah, wah. Oh, Lordy. Well, they got one thing really incredibly right. I'm just going to be excited about that just for the moment. Moving on to the last article I'm going to read. I'm going to keep this video short tonight. I've been talking on this microphone for a long time. This is from the Washington Post, January 24th, 2019. Everything is not going to be okay. How to live with constant reminders that the earth is in trouble. What does it mean to be alive right now, right this second, right this epoch, as mankind alters the earth beyond recognition? In Arizona, in the summer, the pinyon pines don't smell like they used to, says Nikki Cooley. And the wind sometimes feels in error, like it's blowing the wrong way at the wrong time of year. She knows these are feelings, not data, but she is measuring them nonetheless. Cooley, 39, grew up without running water or electricity on Dene Nation land. Herding her grandmother's sheep and sleeping in cornfields, she became one of the first members of her family to get a master's degree in forestry. Now she has her dream job, co-managing a tribes and climate change program in Arizona, acting as an emissary between her ancestral world and the modern one that upended it. If you talk to elders who are some of the most revered people in our tribal communities, Cooley said, they're like, "We told you so. We have been saying this. Scientists, too, have been saying this. Data, not feelings. A United Nations panel reported in October that we have around 12 years to act if we want to keep the quite horrible from becoming the truly terrible. A report this month says that Antarctic glaciers are melting faster than we thought. Also this month, environmental dangers occupy the top 3 spots on a survey of the biggest global risks as compiled by the World Economic Forum. Go figure. They told us so and are telling us so. But here's where you stop reading. Because you have a mortgage payment to scrape together. You have a kid to pick up from school. You have a migraine. The U.S. government is in shambles. You're sitting at your desk or on the subway, and deep in the southern Indian Ocean, blue whales are calling to each other at higher pitches to be heard over the crack and whoosh of melting polar ice. What do you even do with that? Screw the epoch. I don't believe it, President Trump said of his own administration's November report, which stated that climate change is transforming where and how we live. How do we live day by day, mostly? Many of those days are spent trying to be stable, happy, and prosperous. Americans are increasingly certain that human activity is causing global warming, according to a report published Tuesday by Yale and George Mason universities. But who has the willpower or the luxury to always think generationally, geologically? To the end of the century, to the uncertainties beyond. This is a great time to either collapse or to make great changes, says Representative Alan Lowenthal, a Democrat from California, a member of the 3-year-old Climate Solutions Caucus, and we don't know which way we're going. The midterm cycle flushed out nearly half of the 45 Republicans in the caucus, a blow to its bipartisan stability, but it swept in Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York. Suddenly, Capitol Hill was talking about a Green New Deal, about the waywardness of the capitalist adventure. The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change, Ocasio-Cortez said Monday in New York with a doomsayer's zeal. And your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? Climate change is a huge issue. The acting head of the Environmental Protection Agency told a Senate committee this month, but not our greatest crisis. False. An issue, not a crisis. The charred graveyard of Paradise, California is an issue, not a crisis, unless, of course, you lived in Paradise, California. The Cassandras among us look at Paradise, smote by wildfire without precedent, and see the future in miniature, drought-stricken and ever more flammable. We freak out, but we go about our business. The problem is clear, but it has yet to consume us. And so there is no crisis, just an accumulation of curiosities and irritants. Your basement now floods every year instead of every 5 or 10 years. Your asthma has gotten worse. You grew up wearing a winter jacket under your Halloween costume in Buffalo, and now your kids don't have to. The southern pine beetle that once made its home closer to the equator is now boring through trees on Long Island. Excuse me. There needs to be a few cold nights to freeze them, and we're having less and less of those, says entomologist Claire Rutledge. Stealthy effects is the term Michael Paoliso uses. He's a professor of anthropology at the University of Maryland who studied the Chesapeake Bay for years. He has a small house on Deal Island, Maryland. When there is flooding in the county, school starts late. Bus drivers are advised not to traverse standing water if both sides of the road are submerged. So what if you have to go to work and your kids haven't been picked up yet? There's the day-to-day sort of grind, Paoliso says, of the stealthy effects, and soon people will be planning their trips to town, our marshy areas and coastal peninsulas based on the tides. Climate change is more sly than time-lapse video of a disintegrating glacier. It's the creep of bay water into ditches and then onto roads. It's a smell, a nuisance, a crinkling of the calendar. In the soybean fields of Carrington, North Dakota, the first frost is scooching from Labor Day toward October, while the last frost is backing out of May into April. Charles Linderman has watched it happen over 43 years of farming there. A longer growing season right now is good. My concern, Linderman says, is if it keeps going this way. Cool season crops such as barley would suffer. Milder winters might spare certain pests. North Dakota could start to feel more like Kansas. Being alive right now means rethinking boundaries, pushing on the walls of your imagination. It means feeling around in this world for another one. If you have an infant daughter, she is expected to live 81.1 years. And so she will be here for 2100, a year that is no longer mythical. She may see the world's largest naval base in Norfolk swamped by rising seas. If she lives in Phoenix, she may feel nearly double the number of 100-degree days. During her lifetime, the oceans will acidify at a rate not seen in 66 million years if it keeps going this way. Alice Major has lived in Edmonton on the edge of Alberta's boreal forest for nearly 40 years. She remembers 6 weeks of minus 20-degree weather. Now the mercury sinks that low only occasionally, she says. In 1949, the year she was born, the planet had around 2.5 billion people on it. And it had taken all of human history to get to that point. In her lifetime alone, the population has grown by about 5 billion. As Edmonton's first poet laureate, Major has written a book of verse titled Welcome to the Anthropocene, which is the name given to this moment, this epoch, when humans have become a planetary force, the Anthropocene. Whether it began with agriculture, the colonization of the West, the Industrial Revolution, or the atomic bomb, was born of human ingenuity. That's what empowered us to create this mess, and what empowers us now to see it. So how clever are we? Will we invent our way out of this? Alice Major answers, immured in cities, we forget we live on a planet that is more inventive than ourselves. It's possible to read the epoch itself like a poem. Rutledge, the entomologist, has been knitting as part of the Tempest project, which assembles yarn kits and geolocation data for crafters to color code a year of temperatures, rendering climate change into a rainbow of pleasing wool colors such as fjord blue and firecracker red. Each loop a part of a day, each row a day of the year, lines following lines. It's a way to spend the time with something, says Rutledge, who lives in North Haven, Connecticut, to force yourself to slow down and think about it, to manage the anxiety about climate change because it's just so overwhelming. That's the riddle. To grasp the problem, we have to slow down. To respond to it, we have to act fast. We have both no time and more time, says climate scientist Kate Marvel. Climate change is a slope. We can ease our descent, but we don't think about it this way. We want there to be a really simple story. You do this and then everything will be okay, says Marvel, who works for NASA in New York, and everything is not going to be okay. That's the opposite of what a mother says, the opposite of what we all tell each other about the latest worry, about the job interview in the morning, about the lump in your wife's breast, about a report in the newspaper screaming through a muffle of data that we need to stop everything we're doing and pull together in the same direction, or else everything we are building for our children may soon be overtaken by water or fire. Everything will be okay. We say it even when we don't believe it. Maybe we should stop saying it. There is an opportunity in this acceptance. Marvel thinks we need courage, not hope. We must know what's coming. We must realize it will hurt, and we must be very strong together. Hold the problem in your mind. Freak out, but don't put it down. Give it a quarter turn. See it like a scientist, and as a poet, as a descendant, as an ancestor. It is an immense privilege to be alive at this time, Alice Major says from Edmonton. We owe it to ourselves to try as hard as we can to understand what's going on and to give it meaning. Only by understanding our lives as meaningful can we hope to create meaningful change. The wind feels wrong in Arizona, and Nikki Cooley listens to the elders. The Dene know what it means to be driven from the land, to adapt, to survive from one epoch to the next, even though things are not okay. She is their daughter, a line following a line. She has figured out how to be okay for the time being, to give it meaning, the feelings, the data, all of it. It does take an emotional toll, she says. But I have to remember that these people keep going and have been going since the colonial settler stepped foot on this land. And that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I hope you enjoyed that last article, a bit of poetry, a bit of verse mixed in with climate change news. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.